We're just feeling liberated by not having to explain where we've come from. That's all right with you lot. We'll dive straight in, and we'll dive straight in with Karl asking me some questions. I will then ask Karl some questions. We'll see where it goes, and then you are very welcome at any point to ask questions yourselves.
Great. I have to say hello. I know it's a conversation between you and me, but it's weird not to say hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Karl.
So this might take a couple of minutes to tune into.
Yeah.
That's what I think, because you and I have worked together very closely for a while, and so for a space, a physical space, and a time space to be created kind of for us to talk to each other about each other's practice. And we haven't really done this, have we?
No, never.
So here we are. But we have talked a little bit before coming here about kind of what we might talk about. And we agreed, didn't we, that I would ask you some questions about you, and you could ask me some questions about me, and then we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
So I know that we want to talk about hearing and seeing.
Yeah.
So where are you with hearing and seeing?
Bastard. Well, so hearing is seeing to a degree, isn't it? I think, how our brains work. When we input information here, somehow we transform that information into, we uncode and maybe recode in other ways. So if I say the word dog, with a bit of luck, you might see a dog. You will hear dog. You might not hear a dog. You will probably, the first thing you'll do is you'll generate an image. So there is a very clear connection between hearing and seeing. And I'm excited in my theatre work about the place that we see that isn't the retina, that isn't the back of the eyeball, but is, for me, the more exciting place of seeing, which is a sort of more self-authored place of seeing, where when the word dog gets presented to me, the dog that I see is mine and not somebody else's, if that makes sense.
So I really have to interrupt you now.
Please do.
Because I profoundly disagree with something you just said. So how is anything different to that? There is no definitive dog, is there, that we can see?
No.
So it's all subjective anyway, isn't it?
Yes. I didn't suggest that there would be one dog that all of us would see with the entry of the word dog into our ears.
No, but you said something like, when we hear the word dog, we create an image dog.
Yeah.
But that the retina, that's somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then you said something quite vague about somewhere else. Where is that other place?
Where is that other retina, the more exciting retina?
Where is it?
Yes, probably in our minds. I don't know which bit of the brain it could be found, physiologically.
But you're not very interested, are you, really, in, if I could show you the bit of the brain that it was made in?
No, not remotely, no.
Why not? What are you interested in instead in your work? We might have our first row.
That would be good.
Do you know what I mean? Though?
Yes, I'm not interested in the science of it. I'm not a scientist. I'm interested in the phenomenon of it because I understand the phenomenon happens with me and I assume it happens with everyone else.
Yeah.
I have to make that assumption, and as an artist I work from that assumption. It's not an assumption I need to challenge necessarily. I know that I can see things not with my eyes. And when I see things not through my eyes, I am released to a degree from an object or an objectivity. And I am that is replaced with a subject, with a subjectivity that is of my making, more so than if I was shown a photograph of a dog, or if a dog came in now and jumped on my lap, which would be lovely.
Yeah.
But but that would be the dog we are dealing with. That would be the dog in the space. Do you understand me? Whereas if the word...
No, but if I want me to be really honest here, this is where I absolutely disagree with you. Because we might all agree that the dog in your lap is brown and looks friendly.
Yes.
But if somebody here had a bad time with a dog, but there's a serious point, because in a way, in your work, my experience of your work is that you offer to audiences a degree of authorship. It's like you say, look here, what would you like to make of this?
Yes. What would you like to see when I say this?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to show you, but what would you like to see? And I will ask you to generate the seeing of that thing yourself.
Yeah.
I will disagree with you slightly in terms of course, we will all have a different response based on our conditioning to dogs.
Yeah.
But what we see at the first thing, the prima facie evidence of dog, we will all see the same thing. How we respond to what we see will be different depending on whether we were attacked in our prams or whether, that dog looks like Kipper, my childhood dog, or all those other associations that will come from that. But what I'm saying is if you remove the physical object, those associations can still exist.
So why do you love doing that? Because in a way your work, the work of yours that I know, which is most of it, and having worked with you on it, we often deal with the practicalities of the work, don't we?
Yes.
I think that might be one of the things you like about me, is that I make what feels to me like very creative, sometimes quite abstract thought, into something practical and concrete and real.
Yes, which can be very frustrating as well.
Can be very frustrating.
Yes, good.
But it does seem to me that you are, and especially in your latest work, the author that we worked on together, you almost made very explicit the thing that has been knocking around for a long time. You've done lots of shows with objects in.
Yes.
My Arm had objects in from the audience. An Oak Tree had an actor in it who hadn't seen the script until he said the lines.
Yes.
So he or she, in a sense, was an object, a vessel.
But the object was not what it was described as.
Right. So why are you so interested in that? Then?
Because of my suspicion of literalness, I suppose, in art. That's it. The danger of literalness, of having a thing that looks like the thing that it says that it is. It's kind of like, where do I, as an audience member, exist in that relationship now? Okay, you've said that's what it is. It looks like what it is. I don't know what else to do with it, other than to bring my associations. But in terms of what we talked about at the beginning, about what your prima facie evidence is this looks like this. So I'm more excited if this looks like this, but actually my ear is told that it is something else. And then we start to move away from literalism, and then I start to find my relationship in that.
So in the space that, if you get rid of the literalness, into that space comes what? The relationship
comes reception, comes an art, I suppose. The idea of one thing contained within something else. That's a very rudimentary definition of an art process, in a way. That's what has to be, I think, at the basis of any kind of art exchange, so that we see the idea of one thing, but it is not represented by the thing that it is saying that it is, if that makes sense. So for painting, for dance, for music, hugely, and I would hope there's a danger with theatre that because it is flesh and blood and we are seemingly a simulacrum of reality, of every day, we are being what we are being, the danger is that literalism overwhelms that relationship in theatre. And I'm trying I think to try and bring back that relationship between the idea of one thing but contained within something else. So here's an oak tree. The second actor in an oak tree might be a woman in her 30s. She will play a 46-year-old man with a bloodshot eye, 6'2", and that's what she'll play. She doesn't have to attempt to transform herself physically. for there to be a satisfactory rendition of what we say she is in her. Similarly, in the gallery piece England, there are two actors who are playing one character. So I've pushed that even further, where there is no one material sort of container for that character, for what that character says it is, because it's buzzing back and forwards between two performers every time. Trying to remove the literalism.
You said something really interesting now. You said, I'm trying to bring back. And I wonder what your reference is for that. That sounds like it was happening and now it's not.
I think there is a direction that some theatre goes in that seems to be wedded to the notion of real. It's a word that's used in the author a lot, real. It was so real, everything is real. The desire in theatre makers and filmmakers, although film is a different discipline in a way in terms of reality, but if I stick with theatre, there is still, and it's a fairly recent introduction, maybe the last 150 years, the idea of attempting to make the theatre space look like a real other space. And I think that's a reduction of what theatre is capable of achieving, and it reduces, in a way, an acknowledgement of the audience's intelligence to go, it's okay, you don't need to make it look real, it will be real for me. And that notion of it being real for me is where the art is. And it's a situation that I think visual art has moved far away from, in the last less than 100 years maybe. There isn't that request made in visual art now for the thing to be real. Paintings are not painted to make us see what something looks like, they're painted for something else. But very often in theatre, things are made to look like what we say they are, and there is a slavish sort of energy and effort placed into that, which I think is misplaced.
And I was going to ask just now if you meant just in theatre, if you think that's true. So you mentioned music and you mentioned dance.
This is where I get into sticky ground about choreography. I mean, I'll talk about theatre, and because I feel most comfortable to talk about theatre. That's the element that I work in. I also think it is a very...
But in a couple of the things you've just said, you kind of, as you work your way through it, it sounds like the closer you get to theatre being art, I can hear it in your voice. You go, no, we want art. It's like you're trying to make theatre into art. So the reason the theatre can't be art is because it's so obsessed with the literal. Is that right?
Yes, to a degree. Yeah, it reduces it. Yes. I don't say it destroys it or removes it, but I think it reduces the potentiality of it to be an interactive experience, art experience. And I don't mean interactive as in the audience jumping up and taking their place on stage, but in terms of what they are asked to bring. So often I think with theatre there is a movement to completing the action on stage. So the action, everything is completed. The character is rendered immaculately, really. The actor is transformed comprehensively. And nothing else is needed from the audience to complete the process.
So can I ask you, when you are an audience member, if you go and see a piece of theatre and it's rendered, as you would say, so there might be a set and there might be costumes that are precise to the year in which the play is set, if it's a Chekhov or something. What happens to you? Do you get so frustrated? Do you not hear anything or see anything beyond that? Do you just get cross?
Do I just get cross? No, no, I don't.
Does your intelligent audience member not push through that and start to look for something else?
Okay, do I get cross? No, I don't get cross. I feel sometimes...
I do, I know I get cross.
I sometimes feel that they've missed the trick, a trick has been missed. And when I talk about these sort of primary sort of dynamics, I see them as the very root, the base of any work that then gets overlaid onto it.
Okay. So if you're going to make something very fundamental.
If you're going to make decisions like, if we're doing a play set in the 1850s, actually the buttons in the 1850s would be different.
Yeah.
You wouldn't actually, the soldiers in that period would wear their hats slightly like this, and because it's like this, I can't believe this anymore. Do you understand? We get into a vicious cycle where we have to be accurate, where we have to attempt an accuracy. it happens more so in film and TV, perhaps. I don't know, but I think in theatre it doesn't need to. I will talk about a couple of examples. An example that I've used a couple of times this year is the Mark Ravenhill play that was on at the Royal Court earlier this year. It was called Over There, I think it was called. And it was about two twins. One was born in East Berlin, one was born in West Berlin. And it was the story of those two, that situation. And for me, the play was reduced immeasurably by employing real twins to play those twins. Because for me then, some other part of my brain took over, which was, wow, look how similar those twins look. I spent quite a lot of the time in the performance going, well, he's a little fatter. No, his nose is a little different, ears are a little flappier, hair is, they don't entirely, and I spent, sorry, gosh, I spent a lot of wasted energy. Do you know what I mean? A lot of hugely wasted energy, because that part of the literal part of my brain had been engaged. And because it was engaged, I lost concentration on the play itself, the art of the play itself. And my brain, which is a human brain, which of course is intrigued and interested by twins, and is intrigued by the authenticity of buttons from the 18th century. I'm no different to anyone else. But when you're in a theatre... But when I'm in a theatre, I don't need those to be considerations. I think that something then is being destroyed for me when I am placed in that situation. And that can happen all the way down the scale of characterization, of physical transformation, of the desire to, in the course of a play, to sustain an illusion. Because I think it then establishes a set of rules that are not helpful. And then you do get actors going, well, when that phone went off, the whole thing fell. The whole thing just fell to the ground. And I'm trying to make work that goes, it's okay if a phone goes off because we're in a theatre. These are people in the theatre and things happen with people and that's okay. And I don't want to make a piece of work where it would be destroyed by the imposition of the reality of us and now. Okay. I want the transformations to be able to happen based on that wonderful human facility to just see something else in the thing that we are presented with.
So can I ask you a bit about England then, because this is a play.
The play, not the country.
Yes, so there's a play called England.
Cripes.
But one of the things was, I could ask you about England and their World Cup group, couldn't I?
Please don't.
But England is a play that you said must be performed in art galleries.
Yeah.
So we opened it in Edinburgh a long time ago.
Yeah.
You've done loads and loads and loads of it. It's been all around the world. It's come back to the Whitechapel. You've just been doing it in the States. And in the middle of all that, you did the author.
Yeah.
You wrote the author. We did the author. Where are you? What were you trying to do by changing the physical space in which your work was seen? And now, what is it, 2.5 years down the line, how successful was that? Are you going to do another play in an art gallery? Are you going to do a play in a telephone box? Where are you now with space for your work in relation to things being seen?
Goodness.
Where would you like to do your next play? Maybe that's a simpler version of that.
Yeah, no, but that's... the idea of the art gallery, again, it's a dialogue that takes place in terms of the form and content and the context and the space, of course. That doesn't exist independent. Those things don't exist independent of each other. So if you're making a piece of work for an art gallery, you have to be aware of the qualities of that space. And for me, what was interesting with England was the qualities of looking that exists in an art gallery and how those qualities differ from the qualities of looking that exist in a theatre.
Do you feel better looked at in an art gallery?
No, not better, but differently looked at.
How was it?
Very differently looked at, which is very satisfying to be differently looked at. Partly around that notion of literalism, of literalness. So in an art gallery, there is a greater emphasis on I'm gonna, not the ocular muscle, because it's not the eye, it's the other eye, it's the other eye, it's the mind
Where the other
eye.
retina
Yes,
is, yes.
And also the ocular muscle. Those two things work quite hard, actually, in an art gallery, harder together than they might do in the theatre.
Okay.
I think often in the theatre then the ocular muscle works mostly, because it's all being presented for us. In an art gallery, you are looking, but you are also being asked to see beneath what you see, or see around what your eye sees, or see beyond what your eye sees. Otherwise, you would look at a Henry Moore and just go, it's a block of stone, it's a block of stone. Or you'd look at a Picasso and go, it's some colour, it's some colour.
So you got a kind of, my stepfather Graham works in stained glass, and he talks a lot about borrowed light. So in a way, you got borrowed light from the art. Did
Very
you, as an
lovely.
actor?
I would hope that I did, and I can't control that, but I would hope that at times that might have happened.
And what did that do for your work, your sense of adventure, your experience of it? Did it feel just different, or was it more satisfying for you?
It placed the two actors in that show, me and Hannah, it placed us in relief of something which satisfied me.
Right.
So there was us and there was other stuff to look at too. And my hope, in a way, when I was writing it, was how lovely it would be if the audience didn't need to look at us. They could hear us and see the things that we are showing them, but they are using their ocular muscle to look at something else. Just to try and increase, not the complexity, but to almost reward, again, that human facility. To see those, to work those relationships out themselves. So again, trying not to be literal in the performance of the work, that I think helped us greatly in England. It's a very emotional story. It's a story of death and illness, but there was no desire, as we discussed in rehearsal, for us as actors to physically represent that emotion. That emotion, I hope, became present, and that emotion, I hope, would pass through the work in the space, the work on the walls, and hit your mind's eye in a different place than if you were just looking at me.
But what was fascinating as someone who watched England a lot and was in the audience a lot, particularly at the beginning, was, and it was a great shock, but a wonderful shock, was perhaps not on the first night, because we weren't very bold about moving around, were we? But as we got into 2 or 3 shows in, do you remember that beautiful thing that happened when the physical human beings in the space were other physical human beings in the space with you and Hannah?
Yeah.
And it became, everyone became part of it.
Yes.
Physically.
Well, bingo, and that's where the author comes from,
Right.
isn't it? I mean, that's clearly so the author is a piece where the audience are the play, really. There are actors placed inside an audience. There are 2 banks of seating just facing each other. There is no stage in between. Yes, it's the thrill of being in a group of people, and it just so happens that 2 of those people that evening at that moment have an agency in connection to the play to generate the experience, perhaps, but it is not singularly of their making, if that makes sense. Trying to create in an audience, a sense of authority, that the audience can authorize these 2 agents to do the work tonight. I have a lot of suspicion around notions of virtuosity or technical excellence, all those kind of things. I want to challenge those. I want theatre not to be seen as a separate thing that exists somewhere, that is worked up to a high technical pitch and then is presented as a complete entity for an audience of passive spectators. I have a suspicion of that. That doesn't satisfy me as a theatre maker. I want there to be a sense, rather like in an oak tree, the second actor in an oak tree knows as much about the play as any member of the audience does. That's a really important notion of interaction, really.
So, I've got a big question I want to ask you, but
Can I start asking you some questions soon?
not till I've asked my big question.
Oh.
But I've got a little one. I've got a little one first. So, in some senses, you just sounds the word democracy is in here somewhere. It seems like you want to level the playing field. You want to you're asking your performers, and you may well be one of those performers, to level with the audience, to meet the audience. And you're asking them also to sort of be in your play.
Yes, to a degree.
So my big question, and I would be really interested to know.
Go on.
Because you talk about, I'm frustrated about that, I'm suspicious of that. And do you ever ask yourself where this desire comes from? Is it, if I was talking to somebody else, I can imagine it might be a really working class thing.
No,
I've had enough of all this posh theatre.
Yeah.
What I want to do is, I'm a theatre maker of the people type thing. I don't think it's that with you. Maybe it is a bit.
So what happened to me in my 30s is I started to stop enjoying acting.
When did you know that was happening? Can you remember?
Crikey. Yeah, a number of productions that I was in where I just felt nothing was happening. Nothing real and nothing real, there we go. Nothing real in terms of the experience in the space, and nothing live really was happening in terms of the experience in the space.
But it might have
and
well
I
been
became
a
a
film.
bit embarrassed about being an actor. I became a bit embarrassed about calling myself an actor. I still, hands up, I do still feel a bit embarrassed about calling myself an actor. It's
Because you don't want to be associated with the work that you detest so much.
Do I detest? That detest is a strong word,
I'm
much too
provoking
strong a
you.
word. You are provoking me. That's much too strong.
Well, what is the right word then?
what is
Because
the
it's
right
something
word?
about being associated
Being
with
an
the idea
actor.
of being an actor. What's wrong
I'm
with
an
being an
actor.
actor?
Yeah, I was an actor.
I've heard
for
you
many
stand up
years.
for being actors.
I absolutely, and the author is dedicated to an actor. It's a very, very important thing. But I worry that actors are being twisted away from the everyday, really. It's happening in popular culture, it's happening in many, many places. The desire to try and establish an otherness in what I think is a very everyday activity. You know, theatre, art is a dance, music. These are human activities. They are not separate to other activities. They are not separate to the conversation that we're having now. There is no division almost between the conversation we're having now and a piece of theatre starting.
Okay, but then when you write your plays, and sometimes you write them so naturally and elegantly that people think you're just making it up on the spot. So that's just a sort of skill, a craft, if you like. So you could get yourself a job as a TV writer, couldn't you? And they go, oh, he's so natural, and actually every word's written. But I've heard you really, really stand up for, no, these are the words. It's not this, it's that, there. So you are interested in the structured, artificial construct,
yes,
aren't you? As a vessel for whatever it is
for
you
all
want
the
to
other
do.
stuff. Yes, I am. Crikey, that's a jump, isn't it? What were you talking about? You're talking about actors. Okay.
Well, what it is, why don't you like being called an actor? I mean, I suppose, what are you, is the question here.
What the hell are you?
What are you doing with your life, Tim?
I'm giving you the opportunity to leave now. Quit while you're ahead.
Let's get back to seeing, because it's being seen as something, isn't it? It's this, like, you didn't like being seen as an actor. You did, and yet you're okay. Here's the thing I'd like to throw in, and I might be able to talk with some authority, because I can't talk from authority about writing plays. I can help you put them on, but I will never write a play. But I was thinking today about our conversation about being heard and being seen. I was thinking that when somebody says, oh, I've really seen you now. I've really seen you.
Yeah.
Okay. It feels like a kind of, oh, they've seen who I really am. It feels like sort of quite a negative thing.
Yes.
When people say, I've really heard you,
It's
an entirely different, beautiful, it's like, I just want to be heard.
Yeah.
Is a
And
cry.
I just want to be seen is a profoundly selfish.
Isn't that
an act of
interesting?
ego,
What's that
isn't
about?
it? What is that about?
Because, we will hear this play, says any Shakespearean character in Act 5 where there's a play within a play. We will hear this play. Not we will see this play, we will hear this play. An audience is a group of people who have got ears to hear with. And speaking as someone who I want almost nothing to do with the visual world. I was on the tube on the way here. I was thinking, are you just being an idiot with what you're talking about? Are you just opting out? And I was sitting there just in the tube, and there was so much information for me to take in. If I really looked,
Yeah.
I would burst into tears. I would not be able to cope. From just the guys, I only got to the first two people. There was a guy and he had a bag, and
And what are your ears doing? Because there's a overload of sonic, aural information. What are your ears doing?
I don't find it so. I like to listen, and in order to listen, I like to sweep away as much visual information as possible.
So is that why you're working with me? Is that why?
Oh, interesting
You know what
question.
I mean? Are we somehow finding our own sympathies there?
Wow.
In that my work is not highly visual. This is not highly visual.
And yet it's all about the images that
Well, you
people
talk about-
said
okay.
to the author. People came to
Wait a minute.
People came to see the author and said, "How dare I didn't ask you to put those images in my head."
Yes.
And I will often, when I'm creating a space for people to be heard, I will see things and people will articulate themselves in such a way, if they are heard, that create the most amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Talking about form. You were talking about you write these words are so important.
Yeah, okay.
This thing. Go back to that because I've been worrying about that
Okay.
since you mentioned it. We haven't got around to it. And there's an audience over.
Yeah.
And they'll be going. Well, he hasn't picked up on that. He hasn't picked up
Okay.
on that. I'm going to pick up on it now, everyone.
Yeah.
It's really important. So, okay, here we go. A word is a form, is a formal thing, is a
Yes.
precise formal thing.
It's a rendition.
Is a rendition, yes, is a rendition. And without the form of a word, where do we go? What do we do? So there is a specificity to it. You know, there is a really clear specificity. And I'm talking about words, I'm not talking about sounds.
No, I know.
But you're talking about dialogue, and I want to come on to talk to you about what the hell a dialogue artist is, which is my big question here.
Oh, blow.
But keeping going on
Yeah,
form
yeah.
and the precision that language has and that we honour, I think, as human beings. We've evolved grammatical patterns of huge complexity to try and control or contain the chaos that is our experience. And we can do that with pictures, and mostly, as human beings, we do that with words. Text, written word, but also with, I think about the Shakespearean sonnet, talking about let's hear the play. Shakespeare had some feelings. He could have just gone, well, this is how I'm feeling. But no, he chose to use the form of the sonnet. That's how he chose to squeeze the chaos of its experience into some controlled form, with the hope that by doing that, there is I think form is a kind of a carrier. Is a form.
Yes,
is a carrier for an idea.
Okay.
A carrier for an idea, or a carrier for an experience, or a carrier for an act of communication.
Right, and our instinct is to communicate, and
Yes.
this is both. So this is where this is for me our blessing and our curse. I can remember being about 7 years old watching. This morning I was working with a guy called Michael Parkington. And I said to the receptionist, I said, a man called Michael Parkington's going to come in, and we're working in the carriage room. There you go,
Nice.
funny enough, right? And she went, oh, okay. And I said, is that all right? She said, yes, great. Yeah, that's great. And then she'd heard me say Michael Parkinson.
Right.
So she had heard me say something different. So she had a very different image in her head. But anyway, the point is, I was watching a Michael Parkinson interview when I was about 7.
Yes.
And there was somebody on, and I can't remember who it was, but I remember it set me on fire, this idea that the moment we invented a language, our first experience is that we experience the world, yes? As a baby, as a small baby, and we know someone very well who has a small baby.
Yes.
Hello, Andy.
Yes.
We can't even distinguish between the senses of touch, of sight, of taste. They're all one.
Yes.
Right? And then the first thing the brain does is it looks for, okay, oh, and so that's something that comes in here. Oh, and this is something that comes in here. Oh, and that's a touchy thing.
Yeah.
Right? And then life goes on. We build a construct.
Yeah.
Right? Now, who's to say actually the real experience isn't that it's all knitted together, right? If we had somebody else in here, they might say that. But as our first codification, you mentioned code earlier on, of the world, is to separate the channels, right? You could say we spend the rest of our lives trying to put them back together again.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, when we make a word for space, as much as we can have a dialogue about it and a beautiful conversation, we might even write a piece of music, we might even choreograph a piece that's called Space, and it's an exploration of the ideas around space. We have also limited it, haven't we? And for me, when I hear your plays, when I hear your plays, and I see people physically change, you know, their shape changes. Yeah. For me, that is a very profound thing, because it is this human beings struggling with what it is to be human. Yeah. The ideas are bigger than any word can contain, aren't they? And yet it seems to me maybe what you're trying to do when you say reach through the literalism and get into the other place, get back to something. Yes. I think there might be a very fundamental desire in you, which I have no idea what it is, and I don't know if you do. It feels like you're reaching back to something very... Do you recognise that at all?
Well, talking about babies and children, I mean, think about that. And from my understanding, when a baby is a certain age, the whole world is part of them. Yes. And an act of separation takes place. Yes. And also, talking about children and babies, there isn't that literalism. There isn't. It doesn't exist. You know, early age, it doesn't exist. One thing can be anything. You know, slowly, over a period of time, we start to... Yeah, am I searching? Am I going back into
Do you want place? Really to... but it's fascinating, but...
Yeah, you know, so let's not forget that I have spent a lot of time working with young people and writing plays for young people and enjoy the company of young people with theatre work very much indeed. And
what do you like about that? Is it the chaos of it? Or is it the delight, the freedom? The freedom.
Yeah, the freedom. And children don't ask these kind of questions.
No.
I like that. So maybe there is, do you know, are we not all just resisting death? And maybe I'm just doing it on a really big scale, trying to go right. But there is something so freeing about a child who you give them something and it can become anything. And I talk about this idea that you give a child a box, the box can be anything. Then as the child gets older, the box might need to have a picture of what the box is meant to be on it. And then as the child gets even older, the box needs to be in the shape of the thing that it had the picture on the side of it to help. And then when we become an adult, we don't want a box, I want a model spaceship. Okay, there we go. Now the box is no longer a box. It was a really good spaceship when I was 3, and now it's only this spaceship. It was a spaceship and a box. It was 2 things, and now it is only a spaceship. And I don't believe that we lost that. I just think something gets into us that prevents us from really trusting it or enjoying that facility that we still have. I go back to that Michael Craig Martin, the oak tree piece. You know, this is not a glass of water, it is an oak tree. And if I say that's what it is, then that's what it becomes. And how thrillingly freeing that is for me. Because I then don't have to be scientific. You started by talking about what bit of the brain. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, but you know? But you're so naughty with science. Like, you talk about it like it's a bunch of plebs hanging out in a bar next to the Royal Court when they should all be bettering their lives and coming to the theatre. And I was just about to mention a scientific thing that you might find quite interesting. Children, when they count, when they're very young, the first thing they do in terms of recognising numbers is they will see 1, right? They'll see 1. There's 1 apple. There's an apple. And then you say, here's 16 apples, or 14 apples, or 8 apples, or 3 apples. And you go, how many is that? And they just go, apples. Yeah. Apples. And actually the instinct for the child is like a logarithm. They're not interested in 1 plus 1 makes 2, plus another 1 makes 3. We impose that form on them. And I find that fascinating, because when you do your work for young children,
Yeah.
I wonder, this is another thing really,
Well,
I wonder what they see, what they
Well,
hear, when
here
you
we
love
go.
working
This
with
a
them.
little thing. Karl loves to read those kind of books. You love to read those kind of books. I don't.
No, that's all right.
Because part of me thinks that I don't want to know what a child does when it has other apples. I don't want to know what that is about.
Why?
Why? Because
Does it reduce it?
Well, no, because I don't know if it's right. I think it's as much a hypothesis as
One
an
of your
art
plays.
hypothesis. It's one of my plays.
But that's all right, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but then don't come and go, now let me tell you about science. You think they're all like this. Actually, when a child does this, because I've read a book about it, and I want to go, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, but you were being just as certain. You used the same voice when you said, I go to the theatre and they're all putting buttons on their costumes in Russian, and that's wrong. That's wrong. So you're very happy to be certain about that, and yet you embrace uncertainty.
No, I'm embracing uncertainty. Yeah, my anxiety about the buttons is that scientific anxiety. Is that I'm going to use that in a pejorative. I don't mean it that way, but do you know what I mean? In that logico-deductio rationalo. Well, if I'm playing an 18th century hussar, I have to look exactly like an 18th century hussar. There's like, and when a child counts.
I know, but can you hear how certain you sound about that? You sound as certain as a scientist might be when they say if you drop a pea in a car from the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, they'll land at the same time.
A pea in a calf? Like a baby cow? Who would take a baby cow up the Leaning Tower of Pisa in the first place? Just choose a lead weight or something, like a ball bearing. I want to ask you, can I do that? Can we leave that hanging? And
how is this for you so far?
It's all right. Can I ask you what you call yourself a dialogue artist?
Yes.
So there was a challenge, not a challenge, there was a question about the art. You know, I use this word, the art coefficient. It's a fantastic Duchamp word. It's something that for me is what it means, is that it's not this and it's not that. Yeah, it's a bit scientific. So what is it, where is the art for you that enables you to call yourself a dialogue artist?
I don't know. And the truth is, I didn't call myself a dialogue artist. Somebody else called me a dialogue artist. And my instinct was to sort of make a joke and run away from it. And almost just as a dare, I didn't.
I think I've had this conversation with you though, I think it's really important that we had this, remember that walk on Bray Head?
Yeah.
At we were performing at the Mermaid Theatre in Ireland. And I was talking about wanting you to lionize your processes, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And give yourself those names. I think you are an artist. You know, you've always been, well, no. I'm not really. But I think what's happening, what you're doing is that I see the work that you make and I hear something else. Do you understand me?
So, but where do you think the art is? Do you think the art is in the way that I have a conversation with somebody? Do you think the art is when I edit that conversation? Or do you think the art is when others listen to that conversation? Where is it? Where do I become an artist?
It's partly in your approach to the dialogue in the first place.
Right.
So I think about one of those hyper-realist, the Gerhard Richters of this world, who make, hyper, it looks just like what it is, but what's not that, because there is a huge amount of care and attention going into that process. Yeah. And there's a huge amount of care and attention going into you having a conversation with somebody else, which transforms it's just a conversation into something more than just a conversation. Yeah. That's where I think it is. Do you understand me? And I think the work that you do in editing, and I would, it would be lovely to see some stuff from you and for you to talk about that stuff. But where you bring your work as an editor, where you bring your work as a technician, you are working to try and find the other thing that exists between the words that are being spoken.
Yes, I am.
That's why it's okay for you to call yourself a dialogue artist. It's interesting because people might not know what the hell that is.
Well, I don't know any other dialogue artists.
Well, I've got a few in my diary, quite a lot of them. I don't know any other dialogue. As a joke, Karl.
I think that
Yellow pages, D for dialogue artist. Bloody hell!
I
Sorry.
think. Yeah, I don't know. I don't mind. Do you know what? I really don't care.
No.
I really don't care. I don't care if I'm an artist or not.
So what are you trying to do?
That's a good question. I think one of the things I'm trying to do is I am, in everything, in all the work I do, no matter who it's with, you know, whether it's Mike Parkington or some kids down the road here at Walworth Academy who just aren't going to school, working with them a bit, whether it's with, you know, a guy called Angelo who suffered horrific burns, talking to him about it. I am trying to create a space where people can be heard. That's really all I'm doing. That's all I care about.
It's just as a little side thing, you talk about these conversations like I talk about my plays.
Do I?
Yeah, like Angelo. I know the man who saw
It's
himself
like my
on
arm.
fire.
Yeah, okay.
That's the name of that dialogue. And that's, so something is happening in that conversation that is akin to something that's happening in my plays. And the desire of wanting to be heard is akin to what's happening in the author. I want this to be heard. Let's hear the play. So I still haven't had that, what do you want to do with it? Do you know what I mean? Why are you doing that? You want Angelo to be heard because you sense there's something in what he says that is more than just him talking about his experience.
Yes, I do, but that's not because, if I'm really honest, people who've been, you know, polar explorers or astronauts or neurologists or people who've had terrible burns or, you know, the criteria of having conversations with people who've been to places that not many of us have been to, that's just to help sell it. I could talk to anybody.
Yes.
I don't mind. I just don't mind. And actually, the best conversations usually are with people who aren't famous for being an astronaut. Because all of those people have a story to tell. Oh, do you want me to tell you about the bit when I was so cold that I had to imagine a fire inside me? You know, says the North Pole Explorer.
Yes.
And actually, I mean, I'm being cheeky there, it's a beautiful story. But actually, what happened with the Polar Explorer was we did all of that, but then actually, because we took a great deal of care to create that space to be heard, then a level of trust builds up between two people, and sometimes I would call it a 2 and 2 makes 5. Something happens in the space between where, and it's not just that if I'm just being a good interviewer, that's like one-way traffic. When a dialogue happens, and this is, for me, it's nothing to do with art, this is to do with relationship between human beings.
Discuss.
Is when something happens here between us. We don't, and here's where the scientist walks out the door. I don't need to understand that, but I know I'm conscious of it. And what I also know is that if you watch it on a video, even if you watch it live, you may not see it. But when you just listen to it, when you take out the clutter of what we see, you hear more.
So the distinction then is, you're not just being nosy.
No.
Do you know what I mean? You're not just being nosy, you're not just being a journalist trying to get a story.
No.
So when you go into those dialogues with people, what is your guiding principle?
I'm trying to meet them somewhere.
And what skills have you developed, talking about my skills as a writer, what skills have you developed to accentuate that quality, to deliver?
Okay, lots of skills. I mean, I can tell you about them, but it's probably a bit boring.
but not in a sort of flip-charty way, but do you know what I mean?
But the thing, I tell you what's happened as I get a bit older, and I'm getting a bit better at doing it, is that I'm trusting myself, which I find a very difficult thing to do, really, if I'm honest. I fill other people with confidence. I've always been the kind of person that says, oh, I'll fix that for you. I haven't got a clue, but I just have a feeling that if I'm confident enough, something will happen. And 9 times out of 10 it does. But I don't mean that kind of confidence or that kind of trust in myself. I am trusting that I am enough to be with someone else.
Okay.
And I don't know where that happens. I don't know where that bit of the retina or the whatever. But it does happen.
And that's where it comes to me, to my work. You know, trusting to be with somebody else.
Yes, which is very hard because there's so many things in the way, aren't there?
Yes.
The ego. What will people think of me? Yeah, I've seen that happen to you. When I direct you in your own work, and I know the plays well enough to know what it is the author is after, I have to say to the actor, Tim, you're really getting in the way of the play there. Stop it.
Yeah.
It's like, and I wonder what there must be a fear there somewhere, that if you genuinely just were to be, what might happen?
Well, here we go. You know, we talked about it in the author. There's a speech at the end of the play which I had great difficulty with, and when the lights come up at the end of that speech, I found it impossible to look at anyone, and that was an artificial act on my part. I mean, on one level, it was an actorly aspect of me, because I am trying just to gift something, you know, not in a here's a present, but just but pass it over, and not let the actor in me hold on to it, or the ego in me cling on to it. Just pass it over, and then if it's devastating, then it's devastating. But it's not because I have acted, this is going to be devastating. It's just going to happen to you. So you have an integrity in how you receive that stuff, and that's where the problem is for me with an actor. And I'm interested when you talk about lack of confidence or lack of self-confidence, because I've always seen you as a hugely confident man in your relationship with the opposite sex, in your relationship with all that kind of stuff. Karl, I have
my boy.
But we have a parallel, you know, this parallel thing is that, you know, Karl has been around a bit.
All right.
No, but all right. No, and Karl.
What's your serious point that you're trying to land?
The point is that... No, it's not. But the point is that I've always assumed that was because of security in you. But are you suggesting that might be insecurity in you? And the fact that you are so dynamic, and so you go into a space, and I've seen this, you go into a space and people relax, people think someone is here who can deal with this, someone is, you know, you change the energy in a space, you have an extraordinary quality in terms of that, and in terms of getting people to talk to you as well.
As do you.
Well, okay,
you could be talking about yourself.
Pat on backs, both of us. But are you suggesting that that performance is a performance of Karl James, or an attempt to cover up something else that is?
Well, I don't know. I'm the last person to know that, aren't I? But how could I possibly be objective about myself? What I do recognise, I tell you what, something I do that is a very bizarre thing to spend your time doing, is I spend a lot of time listening back to me in the conversations, because when you edit something, because I don't rush it out, you know, it's not, you know, I earn my money elsewhere. This I do because I'm interested in it. When you listen to yourself time and time again, and you hear the breaths, you have your remembering of what that moment was to you, but it's not that moment at all anymore. You know, it's the moment is me with an editing suite going, I wonder if I could take that S down a bit. But what happens is you begin to really recognise the patterns in yourself, and there is a sort of consciousness of it. So what used to be just brash confidence, right, was, I think, a lot of that just brash confidence. That was someone who came from a moment of, you know, quite, well, there was a shit or bust moment, you know, when I was young. And it was like, what do I do now? Do I become victim to the situation, or do I step up and get on with life? So I stepped up and got on with life.
Yes.
But then, of course, as you get a bit older, then you realise that it's not about yes, no.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
your life flings like that. But maybe the ping each time just comes back into a slightly different place.
Yeah.
And I think I'm getting into swinging a little bit now. Have I told you that?
I don't know.
Just in terms of the swing. I feel I am okay. So there's a very important person in our lives called Andy Smith,
Yeah.
who is a co-worker of
Yeah.
ours. Andy will listen to this conversation at some point, I expect. But Andy, in a sense, this is a funny conversation to have with Andy.
Without Andy.
Because in a sense, and something Andy is very good at is being with two things at the same time. I can remember Andy once saying to me, and I remember thinking, wow. It was like the first time I met him, he said, that is very, very deep and profound. It is also very shallow. And I thought, wow, he's amazing. And then I thought, maybe he's just a bit of a wanker. Maybe that's easy to say. Then I thought, no, he is in that space where the certainty and the uncertainty coexist.
And he always just says, it's okay, it's okay.
It's okay. It's all okay. And there's something about learning to be okay with everyone.
Yeah.
That's the project.
Yeah.
That's
the project. Okay, good. That's an answer to what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
It's trying to get that quality, and I hear it in your dialogues, that sense of just, we are here now, and it's okay. And in our okayness, something will be communicated.
Something might reveal itself that in a place of not okayness won't come.
Yeah. I'm aware that we're at 8:05, and I think we should probably see if there are some questions to be asked. Yes, hello. Oh, yes, you've got to wait for the microphone. Sorry.
Oh, yes, must wait for the microphone.
Is it on? Can anybody hear me, or I can do booming voice?
There aren't speakers.
It's about
just so
recording it for posterity.
That must be very irritating. Cut that out. Okay, I have to warn you at first. I don't know if this is a head note or a footnote. I come out of making radio programs, particularly drama documentaries, now write novels and work with artists. Next, we have the fact that I love popular science and am passionate about plays that are not real.
Yeah.
I hate reality in theatre because I think it's for television and film. Okay, next is a kind of eulogy where I would like to get down on my knees and, call you saints, because I saw the oak tree at the Edinburgh Festival and thought it was the best fucking thing I have ever seen in theatre.
Wow.
Okay.
What did you like so much about it?
First of all, I loved the fact that, from my radio side, that there was this mixture between, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but here you have Tim being both a director and part of the production, with a mic in which he tells an actor who doesn't really know what he's going to do, what to do. And he would say, for example, Tim Crouch, when I finish saying this, I want you to say my name is Tim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Tim.
Okay, so that's what they did. And then they also had headsets, and I don't know if you were responsible for this. So you heard some of these directions, and you didn't hear some.
Yeah.
So there was this incredible magic in which you were both part and separate from what was going on. And it was just totally gripping, and I believed in that oak tree and the automobile crash. Now,
go on.
the next thing is that I saw England at the Edinburgh Festival again, and I really hated it.
Right, great.
I thought it night. I thought it was the first night,
very
and I
first
thought
night.
this is a bunch of wankers doing this. Now the question is, okay, so that was a sort of footnote aside. The question is, I know you work together. How do you work together? Who says, okay, here's a script, here's a man who acts in his plays.
Yeah.
Where are you? What are you doing? You're holding the mic? Are you in a little studio saying, Tim, get the hell off the stage?
Yeah.
Tim, you've got 5 more minutes. Do you record it before? Who does what? Say this is, okay, imagine you're doing a play now. You are hidden, he's not. How do you do what you do? That's a very long question. Anyway, there it is.
Well, it really, 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 though, Andy needs to be here. No, he does. He does. No, it's not cool. I'll try and answer the question anyway. I have to say, the amount of care that we talked about me putting into conversations. One of the reasons I stopped doing theatre, so I used to be an actor, I was a theatre director for a while, and I couldn't be doing with it. I could not be doing with it, because if I'm really honest, there's so much other stuff in the way. Ego, the business of being an actor, the lack of reward, that there was no, as far as I could see, there was no serious endeavour going on that wasn't massively about ego. The working process was horribly flawed. No one was thinking about how they rehearsed, when they rehearsed. Should we have an audience? Shouldn't we have an audience? Why do we rehearse for 4 weeks in a row? And so lots of reasons why I didn't want to do it. So I went and did something else and put the amount of care that I needed to put into my work into another place. And then we re-met after 17 years of not seeing each other. And Tim had written a play called My Arm and gave it to me to read, and at that time I still thought of you as an actor.
Yeah.
And we drove up to some hotel in the Midlands, and we were doing a gig for 7 Trent Water Sewage Division East. And I went to bed, took my clothes off, went to bed, read this play, and I got up and put my clothes back on because I had to go and knock on his door and go, this is the most amazing thing I've ever read, and I want to help you put it on. And that was the beginning of this working process. Andy came into that process.
With an oak tree.
With an oak tree, and then England.
Andy Smith, he...
That's another conversation, and my goodness me, there's anyone who should be sitting in one of these seats with somebody.
So,
wow.
But your question is, how do we work? So, okay, I'm going to, just because I'm aware of the time, I write something, I give it to Andy and Karl, we sit in a room, they interrogate it, they interrogate me, I might go away and write a bit more or change some stuff, but I do all the words, I do all the writing, I have an idea, and I know that these two men will support my inquiry, and yeah, I do know that. I also know that they will challenge me if they don't think the inquiry is supportable. And then we go into talks about how will we do this. We are very practical about those things. How will we organise our time, manage our time with the author?
Very important, those things.
Very important things. With the author, which is the last show we did at the Royal Court, we started those conversations a year and a half before. And then we had a series of other conversations. Much of our work is conversation. Much of our work is sitting down and talking about what's happening.
We have brilliant, open, honest conversations. We make time and space for them. We don't rush them. And there's another word that's very, very important. There's a hell of a lot of love in the room. That's the most important thing we have.
Love and conversation.
Love and conversation.
You record your conversation?
No, we don't record the conversation. We don't record the conversations. No.
What you do, you've got the words. What do you do?
Ask them questions, ask them to try it again. I mean, the theatre directing bit's easy. You know, move here, try it there, it's a bit slow there, all that stuff. That just feels like mechanics to me. But I'm aware that probably if you haven't directed lots of theatre plays, that might be the magical bit. And often in a craft, I mentioned my stepfather being a stained glass window maker, you know, he doesn't think the particularly magical bit is the way he leads the light. You know, to me, that's like, it's full of mystery. But it's just very practical. And the most important thing a director can do with actors is remind them that it's okay. They can try things out. Don't be scared.
So an example of this anti-literalism, at the end of that play you hated, England, the audience are embodying a grieving widow whose husband's heart has been placed inside the body of the protagonist. At the end of the play, she says, although you never hear what she says, because it's worked through an interpreter, she says she wants to listen at my chest. She asks if she can listen to you, if she can listen at your chest. So when I wrote that, I assumed that the actor would have to make some kind of physical gesture to embody that action. And then she says, she asks if she can touch you. She asks if she can hold you. What? Touch you. She asks if she can touch you, which connects to all the exhortations not to touch anything that happened in that one. And again, I thought in rehearsal there would have to be something, even because you are that character. There would have to be some move forward or something, some physical manifestation of this action. And within like 5 minutes of working in the space on that moment, it was clear from the three of us, nothing needed to be done for that action to be present in the space. Nothing at all. And I'm so excited by that. And that was a process that is somewhere in my brain in the writing of it, but I use Andy and Karl to just sort of whittle it out, really. And to go, are you sure? Because I'm a bit of a theatrical tart, in a way. You know, I was an actor for many years, and I'm prone to the illness sometimes, the literal illness, you know. And it's wonderful with Andy and Karl, they just go, well, why are you doing acting there? You know, why are you, like you said, you can just look at us. You've said that speech, it's okay. You're not in character, Tim. Relax. You know, all that stuff. I think we should see if there are other questions.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Michael.
Hello, Tim.
Hello.
You talked about interactivity, and I think that conversations are more interactive because you don't know how they're going to end. With your plays, and I confess I have only seen the plays for younger audiences.
Yeah.
The one that sticks in my mind is I Caliban.
Yeah.
But with that, and hearing you talk about the words and the form that have to be precise and the art, it sounds like you have stories to tell that have endings that need to end in a certain way. And I was wondering if you...
Great. Yeah, I can't write until I have a story to tell. That's just a basic, really. It's funny, you know, that is a basic. I have lots of ideas, but the ideas are meaningless, really. Or I might as well just sit here and tell you my ideas. Why would I do a play? Why would I do a play? So there's something about my hope that in a story, there is an act of transmission in a story that goes into you as an audience at a deeper level than if I sat here and told you my ideas. And there are lots of satisfactions, narrative satisfactions, that we just love. We like to be told a story. And if that story can also work through a lot of other stuff as well, then what a bonus, you know, it's fantastic. So story is very important. And in terms of interactivity, there's a big issue that was raised with the author. We were talking about it today, about people wanting to... In the play, we ask the audience questions. For example, we say, is it okay if I carry on? There's a genuine question asked to the audience, and if an audience member goes no, we will carry on. Partly because we have a story to tell. And how excited I am as well by the presence of the word no in relation to how that story unfolds, if that makes sense to you. So I want you to be active in the story. I want you to get those narrative satisfactions from the story, and I know that I'm going to honour the story through to the end. And then if you have some questions with that story, rather than stopping the show and going, do you want me to carry on? No. Okay. Well, let's see what is the situation here? What's your problem with the situation here? Rather than doing that, holding firm to the integrity of the narrative and hoping that somewhere above that, rather like your conversation, somewhere above that conversation, somewhere above that story that's being told, there is a whole other story that's being generated that you are most interactive in. It happens with,
Well, it's the story of being together. You know, the story in the author is about an hour 15? And there's a story unfolds that you're told, and you can explore in your own mind and reference. But actually, the story that happens is of me sitting next to you.
Yeah.
And you saying some stuff that I wasn't expecting you to say. So I'm feeling a bit different about you now. I'm feeling a bit different about myself.
Yeah.
The story of the experience
on.
of being...
Yeah, we'll carry on.
Because there's an act of trust and love there too, which is that we will be okay. We can take responsibility for ourselves in this space, can't we? And I think one of the reasons where we're joined at the hip is where we don't like the idea that at some point, when a group of people sit on one side of the room and people over here, I don't care if they're playing music, dancing, or making stained glass windows, the moment you decide that we're responsible for your safety, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because we've gone into a whole adult child thing, not real child.
I hope is that all right, Michael? Thank you.
When I've never seen Tim so upset as when somebody says to him, like, he's done a play about the dying and death and all kinds of stuff. So we go, yeah, the story wasn't very clear. It's like someone's just stabbed you in the heart. You didn't get the story.
What are you doing? Yeah.
So
that's
it's
failure.
a very deep level stories important
Yeah.
to you. Yeah.
Anybody else? We are heading towards 20 past 8. We're going
Yes,
past
we
20 past.
should
So a
stop
couple,
soon,
yeah,
yeah.
a couple more questions. Couple more stories.
I was curious, Tim, when you were saying about your suspicion of the kind of the very technically polished kind of the literal theatre,
Yes.
and it's kind of negation, or how I heard it, it's kind of negation of the lived moment of the mobile phone that goes off. And I was curious about that word suspicion, and for me, when I hear that, I'm thinking that you're sensing something there behind that. You're suspicious of some kind of agenda, or there's something there. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that suspicion, what you're suspicious of.
Well, there's a classic story in the press last week with Ian Hart. Do you know Ian Hart jumped off stage and went at a member of the audience because the guy had been talking. The guy then says, "It wasn't me." And then Ian Hart, in an interview earlier this year, said, "I hate fucking audiences. Not fucking audiences. That sounds wrong. I hate audiences." You'd like that, wouldn't you?
Get on with answering that brilliant question, please.
It's a brilliant question.
Suspicion. What do you mean by suspicion? What are you suspicious of?
about. Listen, it's what you said about we're up here doing this, and don't you dare interfere, because we've worked for 6 weeks on this, and every moment has been considered and thought through. And if you start mucking around with, I don't know, whatever, snoring or breathing or talking or any other human activity, you're going to destroy this beautiful piece of work we've made. And I have a real problem with that. That's my suspicion, in a way. Suspicion might be the wrong word. I have a problem with it. I have a problem with it because it's deeply undemocratic. It almost feels like it's abusive in a way. And again, that notion of the actor as the expert, as the specialist, as the other. The actor as, I am an actor and you are not. And what I'm doing here is I have worked hard at this, and I want to destroy that. I want to destroy that division. So anything that happens, I had a fantastic experience of doing a note of my arm in Glasgow earlier this year, and there's a woman called Linda who Adrian Howes ribs me about. Linda's in a wheelchair, she's an amazing woman, but she just hasn't got a switch that switches off. So Linda and I spent the whole time in conversation in a way. And people were quite annoyed with Linda, and somebody at the end said, I wish Linda hadn't been in the show. The show was badly affected by the presence of Linda. And I feel very strongly that was what happened. There might have been a different thing to what you might have an idea of, but actually what you got was something else. And it was as equally valid, I think. It was as equally valid. I love the notion of a randomness. An oak tree always fails. An oak tree always fucks up because the actor doesn't know what they're doing. We can never go back and get it right. And it's a terrible thought that in art you can get it right. You know, it's a terrible thought that the twins will actually look like twins. Because that's down that road madness lies, or down that road bad art lies, I think. The impetus to make something perfect. So I'm trying always with my work to remove that and to allow these random molecules that are just momentarily formed as human beings to retain their randomness, really. Said quite sort of floridly.
It's great.
Is that okay?
One more quick question.
One more quickly, then we have to stop. Yes. Thank you.
I just want to nitpick about the twins because I think I'd be in the play and there'd be two people that would come into the space and they wouldn't be twins, and it would be just as easy for my monkey mind to go, oh, why didn't they use twins? Look, they're completely different. I mean, this is so ridiculous. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, it would be a bad production that would do that. It would be a bad production that would make you do that. I think within 5 seconds, 3 seconds maybe, with the right production at the right pitch, you would forget any considerations like that. I would hope. I feel and believe it. It's, for example, like in an oak tree, there is a moment where I feed the actor a speech. And I'm standing on stage. They have an earphone. I'm whispering into a microphone. Regularly, audience members have gone, you said that actor didn't know the play. And I go, they don't know the play. And then they go, well, how did they know that speech? And I go, I'm standing there. And this is the human facility, do you know what I mean? To just go beyond the mechanics, the mechanism, and go into the art place, you know. And I think you would do that more satisfactorily, actually. I would hope. Discuss again. You're not entirely convinced.
But I haven't seen it.
No, I know.
I haven't seen it, so I can't speak to it.
So we should stop.
We should stop. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to thank Siobhan Sue for being a very interesting process the last year and a half since we first hooked up. And it's been a fantastic process for me to start to think more about organisation of physical matter in space. It's been very, very, very useful. And it's just great for Karl and I to talk to each other. Don't normally do that.
Lovely.
So thank you. Thank
Hope
you.
that was
everyone
all right
coming.
for you.
Good.